Hey everybody, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the second edition of Average Joe's Reef. I'm pretty excited today. We've got a fantastic guest who's also a wonderful person I've gotten to know over time. Met her through Instagram. We'll bring her on quite shortly. First of all, I'd like to say good morning, Lynn. Good morning, Peter. Good morning, Sam. Good morning, David. Good morning, Matt. And Bert, nice to see you. UK Reef Bro, Cons Dinero in the house. Glad to see some people joining in for this Saturday. Appreciate your time. As always, show can't be a success without your participation. I really sincerely appreciate that. Just for anybody who's new here, again, Average Joe's Reef is about storytelling, collaboration, positivity, and learning. We are not here as the experts telling you how to reef. It's a two-way learning street here. And let's keep it fun and constructive. And without further ado, I'm going to bring in our guest, Lindsay. Hello, Lindsay.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you? And I sincerely
Fantastic.
appreciate you taking the time. It's kind of a pain in the ass, I know, with the go back and forth. Hey, get me this video, no, not portrait, landscape, and all that good stuff. So you've been a trooper working with me as I learned through all this. And well, we looks
Not a
like we've got
problem.
a couple people in the house, so hopefully we get some good questions for you. Without further ado,
Great.
I'll let you tell me a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I started in 2009 with this reefing journey, so it has been a little while in this reefing world. I started off in like every way's worst way possible, where you were kind of like, I can definitely do this. I've had fresh water, not a problem. It is a problem. It is. It's not fresh water at all. 46-gallon bow front with what I thought was a great stand, zero storage, zero capability for anything other than having a hang on back filter.
Hmm.
Um, it was the world of wet dry filters as well too. So
What
I am
what
in love with wet dry filters. They will always have a place in my heart.
how long ago was this?
I mean, this was 2009, so this
Okay.
was just the beginning. I mean, LED lights were just that mystery where it's like, "Ooh, can we really use this?"
Uh-huh.
And the diodes were huge when they first came out. These were not like you see today. It was T5. If you were like a primo reefer, you had the metal halide lights, like, and then you burn your house down because they got so hot.
And what prompted you into the transition from fresh to saltwater? Was it a friend? Did you see something in the store? Or was it like one of those impulse buys, or
I worked in a pet store, so every day
oh, the
I was
worst.
around saltwater fish and, it literally was that thing where you're just like, "I like that fish, I want that fish." And I bought everything I shouldn't. I mean, keep in mind this was a 47-gallon Beaufort tank. I had a Red Sea sailfin tang, I had a Fu Manchu lionfish, I had a bicolor angelfish. This is not a big enough tank for any of these friends, mind you. But that's okay. And then I just started multiplying. I got a 60 or a 16-gallon BioCube, which was my
Okay.
very first little cubey tank. And I put seahorses in there like a giant mistake maker that I was. Not an appropriate tank. Not so much the volume of the tank itself, the current and just and I knew nothing. I didn't know what I was doing. They're a very demanding critter.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how, myself included, we often jump into things that maybe we haven't done the best job at preparing ourselves for, and it always becomes a learning experience in hindsight, And
Oh, yeah. I mean, I grew up in a time of, like, encyclopedias. When I was if you wanted to know something as a child, you looked in a book because you didn't Google things. You had
right.
every volume of Encyclopedia Britannica, and it was fantastic. Had this Yep, you had the same setup? Love it.
That's excellent. So now you're running what, a 29 BioCube? Is that? Did I get that
That was
correct?
actually I transitioned from the 47 to actually a 55-gallon corner tank, which I handle much more appropriately. I truly feel like I had a better idea of what I was doing at that point. But I was moving a lot. I mean, I was in my early 20s, kind of living the dream life. So from an efficiency standpoint, having a massive tank was
Hmm.
not ideal.
Okay.
So then I
Yeah.
switched down to a 29-gallon, which was a T5 setup for the BioCubes at the time, which actually you can do a lot with those. The 29s that have the T5 strips, well, T5, we'll call it that. Um, I have very much so had a clam in that tank. The light output with the correct bulbs is actually pretty good. And then eventually I transitioned over to the 32 once I moved finally to our current house.
So yeah, from what I've seen in your tanks, you're not a reefer that is necessarily gear driven. From what I've seen, and that's just more like a personal preference these days. Because I know, speaking from my own point of view, I think I get just as excited about the equipment as I do the critters in the tank. But clearly, you're more focused on what's going on inside of the tank, and you seem to do a pretty good job of being successful. I'll call it successful. You're keeping healthy critters, and doing it without a lot of the hype gear that a lot of us get excited and fight about daily amongst
Oh yeah, I
ourselves.
mean, I'll be honest, sumps are terrifying for me still to this day. I would love to expand into that, but I just know with the amount of time I have to give my fish tank, that all-in-one of the 32 cube is actually pretty darn awesome
Right,
for someone
because
like me.
you're reefing while parenting, right? So
Yes, I have 3 kids. I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 1.5-year-old. So things get, chaotic, we'll say that.
so yeah, old dusty guys like me, where your kids are all grown up, you have an infinite amount of time to play with your hobby and goof around in your
I
work
can't
shed.
wait for that. I
Uh,
cannot wait for the day when I could have a tank like yours and just have it be beautiful and automated and nobody's touching things.
I remember when I had my first bout of kids in the age range that you had, I ended up tearing down my tank, and that's where I
I have
stopped
come
having them.
very, very
So
close to
I,
that.
I admire your aptitude on juggling all those things that you have to do to keep these tanks running. Because especially without the automation, it's probably a little bit more hands on.
Yeah, I have 0 automation. 0.
So how many hours a week are you spending typically maintaining your tank as it is to an extent that you feel it's healthy and doing well?
Probably about a half an hour. I'll be honest, because in such a small tank, it's kind of nice. I'll take a video one day and I'll post it of how I change my water. I literally take a gallon jug, I submerge it to scoop the water in the tank, and then as I'm pulling the gallon jug out, I'm just pouring another gallon jug in, and then I'm done other than scraping my glass for the
Nice.
while.
Bert Minshew asks, what do you hate most about maintenance and what do you love most about maintenance?
Well, with the 32 cube, anything that's an AOI, you don't just have that front beautiful view, you have a whole section in back that needs cleaning. So once a month, I do spend a good probably 2 hours detail cleaning where everything comes out from the back. You got to clean that whole area because so much detritus gets settled back there. That's actually a big spot people miss in
Hmm.
terms of these all-in-one tanks is actually those back chambers in terms of cleaning. I mean, I got pineapple sponges up the wazoo back there, you name it. Who knows what's growing back there, honestly.
So other than the included, because it's an AIO, obviously, other than
Mm.
the included return pump nozzles, I mean, are you doing any supplemental power heads from the back, or are you just kind of using the tank as configured when it was new?
I did upgrade the pump. So I did the 1.5. Oh, what brand is that? SIC Sice? Is that
Oh,
how they
Siche,
pronounce it?
Siche.
See, I don't know how they. That's another thing. I've never actually heard a lot of these things said. I just read them, so I'm just
Right.
guessing. Yes. Anyway, so I did upgrade that to have a little bit more gallons per hour flow, and I toggle. So I'm a little bipolar with the flow in my tank, where it's never the same. I'm moving nozzles constantly, moving this here, moving that there. Sometimes I have 2 power heads, one on either side, one high, one low, and I'll switch. Right now, I just have one power head. It's actually been working amazing for as cheap as it is. Um,
Now, is that due
the
to
Hager.
is that due to the fact that maybe one coral isn't happy at the time, or you're kind of looking? I mean, when you're moving the power heads around, and I've done the same thing. Occasionally my tank is 2 years old now, and I'm still once in a while tweaking things out. Especially as the corals grow out, right? It changes the
Yes.
flow in your tank. So I was just kind of wondering what you're seeking.
Yeah,
Moving
it
the
has to do a lot with kind of what the corals are doing at the time. I'm very much a person who, you know what, even if the coral's mad one day, 2 days, 3 days, I leave it alone. I don't touch it because who knows why. Like my Duncan, did a post on that. It retracted for like 3 days and now it has like 8 babies attached to it. So sometimes leaving it alone is
right.
fantastic. But
It's like
yes,
when
I
you
do.
give your
I do
kids
feel
three
very
ice cream
lucky.
cones and one's unhappy, right?
Yeah, exactly. I can't sit still when it comes to my tank, quite honestly. I don't really know why. I should show the progression of all the rocks moving around in my tank, more so because I like the appearance changes. My corals get huge. Like the one coral I have, oh my gosh, my Bruno, my one I destroyed, my absolutely massive Platygyra that I absolutely ruined. And I
Yeah.
ruined him because I got Instagram, fun fact, because I started caring about my fish tank. I destroyed my poor coral. Anyway, but I had to move rocks around because he got, I mean, from end to end, it was at least a 12-inch diameter coral in
If
a
you had
tiny.
only had your bad advice filter on, right?
Oh my gosh, I know. Yes, it was one of those things where people are like, "Oh, all of your parameters are off. Change them now. Everything's going to die." And immediately you go, "What do you mean everything's wrong?" No,
Um,
nothing is wrong.
Poor Man's Reef wanted to know: do you mix your own salt and make RO, or do you get it from your LFS? I mean, what is your go-to there?
I love this question because I am that person who everybody hates in terms of water. I just get the distilled water from Target and I mix some of the Reef crystals, a little orange bag in, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, so yeah, just a really laid back, low approach to that,
Yep.
and we'll
And
we'll
I've
get
had really good luck with distilled. So,
okay, and we'll go through Lindsay's tank here very shortly. If you're wanting to know why her page is Harlequin Reef, you'll become very
mm,
obvious quickly. Um, Bert commented, "Get a Duncan. It's the best coral indicator." I do believe they're kind of like a yellow canary, I think, in some aspects.
yep,
And I do believe you have a Duncan, don't you?
I do. He had a fun story.
Well, all right, let's get into that when we see it. So let's move over and we're going to take a look here. And if you want, I can pause at any particular point if you want to touch on that. But why don't you introduce this to your Harlequin shrimp here?
Well, this oh, my poor Harlequin shrimp. So this was past tense, Rose. Absolutely loved her. I got her because I had those tiny little starfish, the Asternas. I had such a problem. And I don't care what anyone says. Yes, there are thousands of different varieties actually of the tiny starfish. You can kind of tell the difference in coloration about what ones eat your zooanthins and which ones don't. Maybe you have them, maybe you don't. Mine was definitely eating all of my Zoa, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't keep them until I saw them eating them. Fight me on this one. No, they eat them. So I got her. She took care of it in probably, I'd say, a good 2 weeks, and every one of them was gone. I had no more issues with them. But then came in, as you see, the supplemental feeding.
Ah,
They
yes.
don't eat all kinds of starfish. They only eat the cute, chubby ones, which
So you
is
you
like the
can't feed them
chocolate chip.
Asterina starfish and hope to have them be thriving and healthy. And that's a pretty good sized starfish. I'm looking there. That thing
Oh
looks
yeah, I
like
mean
enough.
I mean she'll go at that for probably 2 to 3 weeks depending, and then there's usually a week leeway where you don't have to supplement feed them just because 'cause they're digesting a massive meal, and then you do so they're an expensive friend to feed unless I've heard people say they actually have a separate tank just for starfish, like a 20-gallon long, and then they cut legs off of the
Like a feeder
starfish and
tank. Okay. It sounds
exactly. I will say starfish are incredibly difficult to cut through. That is not a pleasant experience. It's like trying to cut through a rock.
mm,
So realistically, you better have the world's greatest knives if you're going to plan on cutting
right.
through them all the time, or just feed the entire thing. It's okay.
So you have me actually curious. In being quite a large starfish, and you mentioned that it takes a couple of weeks for him to mouth through that buffet. Do you find that starfish adds nitrates to the tank? Is it still kind of alive? I mean, it sounds kind of macrame at some level here. He's uh,
This is
working through his meal that might
extremely
not be
macabre to
dead, or
talk
is it
about.
dead,
Yes.
or yeah.
They're actually Harlequin shrimp are the masters of the slow death. I mean, they are the psychopaths of the shrimp world in terms of they flip the starfish over and the only part they truly eat are the palpi, the feet. So those little feet that you see moving on the underside is really what they're after, which those feet go into the starfish and tie into a whole
Right.
vascular system. So as they go from the outside of the feet and work their way to the central body mass very slowly. They'll do one leg, And the entire time it's alive, mind you, this starfish. So I have never had ammonia spikes. I've never really seen any issues with nitrates, anything like mine always hover around that kind of 12, tops 20.
So in the feeding that you mentioned, having to put starfish in there, it sometimes might sound a little bit like, that you got a cat to eat the mouse and a dog to eat the cat. And
Pretty much.
does the Harlequin shrimp go after anything else in your experience with your keeping them in a reef tank?
In a case of starvation, they will go after urchins, but that's if you completely neglect them because urchins do also have those same tentacle feet, those little palpier feet that stick out of them. So, but that's like extreme starvation. They will. They are absolutely peaceful friends. I have a brittle starfish, which they will not go near at all because it's not the right kind of food. They're actually in
Okay.
a completely separate class of
And
starfish.
and raising these, you've learned a little bit about starfish. So
I
Lindsay's got
have,
a little bit
yes.
of a treat for us. We got a little PowerPoint at the end, and she's gonna talk to us a little bit about what she learned about starfish. Something she ran with. I noticed on Instagram. I was pretty impressed with it because I didn't know anything about starfish, but I knew more once I read that. So we'll move into that there. So
Perfect.
this is kind of your current tank today,
Mhm.
correct? Correct. Kind
Yep,
of
this is
go
current.
over what we got going on in here, like with your Carlos. Now, Bruno, that was the one in the back that's gone now, right?
Yeah, he's in the back left. You can kind of still you can see
Yeah.
him middle of the tank, back left. That is a fraction of what this poor coral was. The front left, I have a mushroom rock going. Center of the tank is my hammer coral, which will not stop growing. Absolutely will not stop growing. I have had to frag this thing so many times. I am at the point where it's almost frustrating. So that's, I mean, it's great that it's doing so well. And then next to that, my Duncan, who
Mhm.
actually he fell between rocks, probably a good. Oh yes,
This is the guy right here,
that's
right?
Bruno.
And this is
Everywhere you see skeleton is
mhm.
what he used to be. And this is my clownfish actually trying to spawn and bond with him and trying. I wasn't happy about that. This is when he started to decline. I pretty much is when these guys decided he was their choice of host.
So tell us a little bit
Oh,
about
I love this. The pink tip. Ah, yes,
tell us a little bit
Bruno.
about what happened with that coral on Instagram, or what led up to that browning out. Because a lot of times, I've changed things in my tank because a coral wasn't doing well, right? And it was just that
Yep.
one coral, and then I made everybody unhappy. Was it so? In the case, was it just him, or did other things suffer?
This was this was the reverse. This was everything was doing amazing. Everything was great, and I tested my water and my I have never actually tested. I had an API test kit prior to getting like the henna checkers and all these fancy things. And I'm talking literally this happened within the past year. I finally started testing. I just never really thought it was that important because your coral and your life tells you what's going on in your tank and whether or not it's happy. So that was
And
my mentality for a very long time,
okay, and
and
that's fine.
everything was
It's
wrong with my tank.
Yeah, everybody's got a journey, right? And we learn and you figure it
Yep.
out.
Oh,
And
exactly.
as you're passionate, if you're only semi-passionate about it, you're only going to put in that much effort, right? But if you're really grabbing you, it's just like most things, you're going to dump more stuff. How frequently do you change water then?
Um, when I remember, which might be every 3 weeks. I mean, I've gone months. I have gone months and months and months without water changes solely because I just didn't have time. I would throw food in
Mhm.
and kind of let it do its thing, and everyone still was happy. More so recently, I've stopped doing that because I've started caring about my tank a lot more. But I feel like the neglect over the years has actually made it a pretty bulletproof tank as long as I don't touch things.
How long has that particular tank been up then?
Oh, that's going on 5.5 years now
Yeah,
of
so it's a
this
pretty mature
32.
tank, and I think tanks like that. I think, in my experience, and please everybody else chime in. I mean, there's so many experiences out there. Is the younger your tank is, the more it benefits from water changes, and then as it grows,
Mhm.
I think you can get a little lazier, and I certainly have. I'm only changing water every 6 to 8 weeks. And
Yeah. Oh,
then I'll change
exactly.
about 30%. But and in the meantime, dose a little trace here and there. But early on, when I tried to not do water changes, it did not go well.
Yes, but there are other ways for nutrient export besides water changes. So never forget that.
Yeah, And then here's your Duncan at,
Yes, this is actually an older photo, as you could tell, because you can't see all the babies underneath it. Yes, that's my hammer coral doing weird stuff.
Farm
Yeah,
Frags.
that
Farm
actually is the same Duncan
This is what we wanna work
as
to, 2 years since my last water change. There you go.
yep, see,
If you have
exactly.
goals.
There are other ways to get nutrient export to happen than just changing your water out. It truly is amazing once you kind of grasp how nutrients get exported. Like even removing balls of keto, even removing your sea lettuce, cutting in half, that's nutrient export. You're
Mhm.
removing nutrients from your tank and actually encouraging better growth in your tank.
Yeah, and
Less is more,
you
friends.
don't have a sump or a refuge or anything like that. You're just using the all-in-one chamber in the back or
Yep, so it's an all-in-one. Technically, it's a kind of a refugium. It's literally a rack that I have modified with the same thing quilters use.
Ah,
These
okay.
these
Oh,
2 sides I had to add to it to modify it because for some reason it didn't come with sides, so when you pulled it out, everything just kinda went out the sides, so design
alright.
flaw? I don't know.
Yeah, we got a few shots of Lindsay's, setups, both, stock and modified.
Yes. Ah, yes, I love this photo of so I have sponge on sponge on sponge on sponge in my tank. No matter what I do, I will always have sponge. I don't have excess nutrients. I don't feed excessively. I just get amazing sponge growth for some reason. Every color you can imagine.
And to
I
me,
don't know
that's
why.
always been a size of a healthy tank. At least to date, I've not yet had sponges become a problem for me. I mean, you get the typical pineapple ones I've seen. I've got some yellow ones myself. I like the pink ones there. That those look nice. But
Oh, those are so cool. The way that they actually get very long tubes on them too, which will reach and it's just their kind of feeding siphon, I guess. I'm not really looking to sponges too much.
no,
Uh,
right. I don't know much about them either, but I do know that they're a great addition for filters.
Yes, these
And
next photos. Haha, bryopsis.
yeah,
Yes.
so we talk about pests and things that
Ugh,
happen in our tank, right? So you've got
yeah.
your unwanted starfish that you're eating your zoas. You've got some was that bryopsis?
Yes, yeah. I'm pretty sure it's bryopsis. I didn't get a beautiful picture of it through my microscope, but yes, I'm pretty
And
sure I have bryopsis in my tank, which was brought in by mistake because, oh, my husband said, here, I got this coral frag from a friend. I'm looking at it going, it's just algae. I'll dip it, peroxided it, good to go. Went away. Well, it came back with a vengeance. And so I took a whole rock out, the one that had the mushrooms on it, because that's the rock I put it near, because that was covered in it. And I peroxided it 24 hours. Everything came back. I do not have a QT tank. It's okay, yell at me. I should. I have never quarantined anything. Knock on everything wood possible.
I mean, that's an approach. I mean, there's a great debate out there, and it does come down to personal preference, right? There's risk tolerance amongst
Mhm.
everybody, right? So it's like if you don't have a lot invested in your system, which your system looks to me great, but it doesn't look like you got a lot there. But there is the time, right? But
Budget friendly.
yeah, if you're not constantly adding stuff, maybe not.
Yeah, if I was adding frag after frag and I truly had a tank that I was gonna grow out, expand upon, do then yes, I will definitely recommend to people dip, dip, dip.
Yeah, Bert's in support of you, so you're not alone.
Thanks, Bert. So
And then
this photo that is up right
another
now,
common tank pest, super glue.
super glue. Oh my god, I have this fish's name is Ippy, idiot pants for is the full name, but it's Ippy because as soon as I put the frag into the tank, it came up and it bit the bottom that was covered in super glue. So what you see in its mouth is literally it has super glued its mouth shut. And anyone who knows royal grandmas knows you just can't catch them. That's not how they work. So I was like, well, you're on your own, kid. And for about a good week and a half, it swam around with its mouth glued shut. It lived, it's doing amazing. But
So
yes, PSA to friends, super glue will glue their mouth shuts.
it eventually worked itself out. That's fortunate.
It will, yes.
Excellent. So the
Oh, all these
Gorgonian,
photos.
do you still have that?
Pardon?
The Gorgonian?
Yes, he lives in the back of my tank. I can't kill it. Honestly, I've had that since 2009. It hasn't grown, but it hasn't died either.
Just hanging
I
around.
don't really understand it, but I keep it because at this point, I'm almost bonded in a like, I'd be sad if it did die finally, but it's not photosynthetic. It feeds
Okay.
off of whatever's in my water column.
All right, so it's a non-photo. It's an NPS gorgonian, right?
Yep,
And I've had my eyes on some of those for a little while. That I think I've got enough nutrients and feed enough in my tank that I would love
it's
some
hideous. It's
NPS.
absolutely hideous. It's like this weird brown color with these weird brown little polyps, and I but there's certain corals where you're like, "I appreciate the fact you are still alive. I'm keeping you."
Well, maybe we can figure out a frag swap deal here where you snip me off a little of that NPS gorgonian and I'll send you something in return. We don't have to.
Oh, I
No,
got
no
plenty to
money
snip
needs
off
to
of
change
you.
hands, right?
Perfect.
Just a handshake deal. Excellent. Excellent. So going along, we have a couple more pictures. Different light there. Was that just a
That was different. That was so this is actually a newer photo, and that's an old
okay?
one back when
Okay.
Bruno, the big potty
Yeah. That.
gyro, was actually doing pretty well. Because I had him nice and top, but you could see how big he was getting. Yes, and then I added that huge rock up top to
Okay.
reach closer to the light. Because I got a Montipora, so I definitely needed to raise that as close as I could to the light. Because everyone knows the BioCube lights aren't spectacular, but they will grow what you want.
So you are growing everything. You mentioned, a couple of your corals, like the hammer, especially, seems to be
Yes.
thriving, and you have to frag it periodically.
Oh, at least once a month. I think the last frag, I got 6 heads off of it, and I had 9 remaining.
And
So
do you know anything about that stock BioLite or that stock light in the BioCube? Maybe.
so they seem to be changing it a lot. So this tank is circa 2007 model. The newer models definitely seem like the lighting itself has been modified to be less of an output. I don't know my output. I've never tested par. That's actually a new thing I started learning about. I have always known about the K, the Kelvin, and
Hmm.
everything from T5
Yeah, the
lighting.
light color, right? Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Not too sure exactly what my output is right now, but it seems to be better because there are some people who look at me and go, "You have any kind of SPS in your?" Yeah, I do. My Montipore is getting huge now. Granted, it's been I think 8 months of having it in the tank, but
So
it's
I
grown.
mean, yeah, but it is growing, and you did looks like you kept in mind that it needed more light, so you elevated the rock and put it in a location, right? So half of
Oh
the,
yeah, I
I
mean it's
think
about 5 inches from the water surface.
half of the success in our corals, right, is about placement, right? Light,
Yes.
flow, all that good stuff, right? So
Oh
it
yeah.
definitely looks like you're keeping in mind for that. So here we go. Different things that you dose to your tanks. Is it flavor of the month, or is it you've got a regimen you've stuck with for quite a while, or you're kind of exploring different options, or what are you kind
Flavor
of
of the
doing?
month. I'll be honest, before once again Instagram and I started caring, all I ever dosed was the Fluval Reef one. I can't remember the name of it. I haven't used it in a little while, but I just would dose that kind of when I did my water changes, and then I'd set it and forget it. And that was it. That was all I ever did. And then I all of a sudden realized I was like, hey, you know what? There's a lot more things you can add. So I realized, hey, the purple up, that's really good for the ionic calcium, which I could definitely say, if you have not tried purple up, it is worth it. Not so much for coralline algae growth, but the synthesis of the calcium from this definitely seems to be better than some of the other calcium supplements I have noticed.
Okay, so you do supplement calcium and alkalinity to some extent down to.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
Fluval. Fluval's, I mean, God, it's probably one of the worst ones out there for most people. I'm probably killing a lot of people saying that I use it, but
Well, that's the nice thing about reefing. There's so many roads to the airport, right? I mean,
oh, exactly.
if
Yep.
if you take your only cue from some of the forums, Instagram, Reef to Reef, things like that. I mean, myself, I've been guilty of it too. You think there's just one way to reef, but there isn't. I mean, you mentioned dry filters. There's people very successful out there with canister filters. They get shamed a little bit, but hey, if you look at their tank and it looks great, who cares what they're doing?
Oh my god, the wet dry filters, Tom Rapids Pro. I will always remember that filter. Why? Because it had a protein skimmer built in. It had a 3-stage technically trickle filter. So, it's very similar to kind of what we have in back of my tank right now, but it was massive. And it had a great gallon per hour.
Hmm.
That was by far one of my best filters. If I ever went back to a canister filter, hands down, I would try to get my hands on a Tom Rapids Pro.
And I'm not very familiar with the BioCubes. I've known a couple of people with them, but I haven't looked under the hood. Does that thing have a skimmer in it? Are you skimming? I mean, what is your
So
mechanical filtration that's currently in that?
sometimes I skim, sometimes I take it out. Honestly, the skimmer, I use the V2, which is by Coralife, which is specifically made for it. I put that in chamber one. It's tiny, it's super loud, it's very annoying. There are some months where I'm like, I just need some quiet time, and I take it out.
Right,
Oh,
right.
yes, underneath my tank.
And
I
here's the
actually
control
cleaned it.
cabinet, right? So we got all your no automation going there. But I do like that you have an Inkbird there, so you're at least covered from a heater malfunction or something like that to the best you can be.
Yes, I learned that was one of the first things I think I bought was that Inkbird because I was looking at a lot of people who go, "Oh my gosh, my heater exploded or my heater just wouldn't shut off." And that's actually seems to happen with pretty much every brand everywhere. So it's not necessarily the branding, I guess, that is the issue. It's just that these things are prone to breaking down and that's kind of normal.
Right. We could argue all day long which ones break down more, but they're all gonna
But
break.
they
I
all
mean,
do. At
I
some
use
point, something's
I
gonna fail.
I use the BRS titaniums, and I've had one go out on me. Thankfully it
Yep.
wasn't spectacularly. It just stopped working, right? But I mean, some
Well, it's,
people.
yeah, it's better than just like cooking.
I don't remember who it was. I think it was somebody out of the Discord channel I'm in. Zach, his name is. He showed us he had an Aqueon little heater in his nano tank, and it was cracked in half, and it just caused massive chaos in there. So
Oh, yes.
yeah, it's these things can go south on you quick. So definitely have a plan with those. But
But that's the extent of my automation. Yes, so at the bottom of this photo here, you can see the V2,
okay,
and then
that's
you can
that's your
see my
skimmer, the oval up
yes.
there. Okay.
Yep, and it's tiny. I mean, it's like
Hmm.
that big.
And does it have kind of an automatic shut off, like a leveling sensor, or hey, if you
No, it
if
just
if you
keeps
get
going
busy,
until
if
I
you
see
get
the lid
busy, it's
bubble,
just gonna recycle as it goes, those
pretty
things.
much.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, truly, it's just there to add that little bit extra oxygenation to the water because I have noticed that when I don't run it, I run it about an 8 pH. When I do run it, I can get that additional zero point 0.1, zero point 0.2, depending upon how open the windows are in the house too.
Yeah,
Um,
I've found that skimmers can greatly impact the pH and whatnot. So
oh,
that's
definitely.
definitely
Oxygen is your best friend, friends.
and lack of CO2. So what do we
Yes.
got going on here? We've got some bendy straws.
Yes. So Rhino's Reef, love Rhino's Reef. He's going to be helping me 3D print something to replace my bendy straws, hopefully soon. So the first chamber you see, that first filter pad closest to the bottom of the photo, is the actual filter pad that goes into a micron, that goes into the bag of Chemi-Pure Blue, and there's blocks at the bottom. And then above that, where the bendy straws are pointing towards, is where I have my sea lettuce.
Okay.
Um, it gets no flow. It's so silly. It's one of those other things where they go, you should add this to your tank, but it's pretty terrible.
Okay.
Modification. So the only way I could get flow to it is with bendy straws. Zero mechanicals right there. All you need is to put the bendy straw one end higher and the other end lower. And it flows beautifully. And I have seen
Works.
so much better growth just getting this tiny bit of flow in.
That's awesome. I
Um,
mean, that's just the best MacGyver DIY solution you could possibly get, right? And you
I have
probably got
children, so
those.
we have a plethora of bendy straws, so I can
Right, right.
easily change those out. I don't know if it's BPA free. I don't know if it's leaching any chemicals, but honestly, it's working and nothing seems to be affected by it. Totally worth it. If you can MacGyver something in your fish tank and save yourself a little bit of money, you know what? Do it until you meet a friend with a 3D printer.
Yeah, I've seen that Rhino's Reef on Instagram. It looks like he's doing some pretty cool stuff.
Oh, it's amazing. Yes. Actually, my frag rack, my very first frag rack I ever had was from him. No, it's quality work. Check him out.
Yeah, I love 3D printing, but I was like, nah, I'm not going into business. I ain't keeping up with that guy, but he's doing some really cool stuff. I like it. I keep an eye on what he's got going on. Bert had a question, I think, for me. Bert, I can't remember. The thing's sitting in a box right now, so let me get back to you on that one. I'll reach out after the show and see if I can remember. But that's cool. I love the innovation. So he's going to come help make us like a little more elegant solution or something. That,
Yes. Yep. I'm going to send him dimensions to hopefully get a better overflow created,
mhm.
where water directs a small channel. Pretty much what it would replace the bendy straw. So it would create a small channel that allows the water to go over there
Okay.
without bendy
And these
straws.
are the
Yeah.
baskets that
Those
you grow your
those are the
seedlings.
baskets. Yeah, I know. The blue light was on, you can barely tell. But the basket closest to the left is where the sea lettuce is. And then you could kind of see it's got a wall that's a porous wall on it. I had to add that. I just super glue that to the side of it
Okay.
because they're just open sides on this thing. Like, why? Who thought that was a good, because when you think about it, when you go to pull something out, the whole thing is outside and it's rubbish.
So that sounds like a good way. I wanted to start kind of. I was thinking about starting a new segment, to the series here called Soapbox, and give everybody who comes on board a moment to rant
Yes.
about whatever. We all have it. It's call it an idiosyncrasy. It doesn't even have to make sense to anybody else, but we all have it, right?
Oh,
We know what
definitely.
happened. So this is Lindsay's soapbox.
Well, my soapbox in general is, ready?
Yep.
Hi, friends. Do not buy a BioCube if you plan on taking the lid off. Why? Why would you do that? Just buy a better tank with no lid. I don't understand. I get it. The lid is rubbish. I get it. You're going to buy a light. Why not just buy a better tank?
Right. You kind of spent some money that you're clearly not using.
Oh my god, and these aren't cheap. I mean, well, they're cheap in terms of if you could find them for free, if you could find them used,
Mhm.
but they've gone up in price. Oh my god, when I bought this thing, it was like 2 something. They're up to 400 something dollars now.
Yeah, and they do add some nice features, and the quality is going up. I think for sure. It's a great tank if you just wanted to get your toes wet for sure. And obviously
Yes, it is
you're
a
making it work long
phenomenal tank.
term. So I mean,
Yeah,
kudos.
exactly. If you just want something you can set it and forget it and just kinda let it be its own little ecosystem, get it for that. Keep the lid on. Don't do too many modifications. It will serve its purpose as is. I promise you folks.
I should have had this group back a few pictures here. I believe that's a bristleworm, right?
Ugh,
One of your favorite
yes.
residents.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Every single thing in your tank serves a purpose. Bristleworms, vermilion snails, those little snails that has little tubes on it, those adorable little tiny feather duster things that have the little white tubes, peanut worms. I have peanut worms in my tank. Every single one of these pests are actually encouraging your tank to be an ecosystem, which is why I kind of think I've had so much success because I mean, I threw that guy out in this photo because, well, he's over there. Gross. I no, too big. Too big.
They serve a purpose. It just might not be yours, right?
Exactly. But having some in your tank is not a bad thing. Having some, once again, what people consider pests in your tank, it's not, I know it moves. Ugh.
Right, right. And
Starfish
these
bones.
starfish
Did you
bones.
know starfish have
And
bones?
they're littering. This must be an aftermath of dinner.
Yes, I mean, you can barely tell, but I have little square bones like everywhere in my tank. Chunks of bones. I mean, it ends up being super morbid having a harlequin shrimp because you literally, I mean, my tank is just a graveyard now of bones. But that all those little bones, they're calcium carbonate. They're leaching calcium back into my tank. So in reality, they're actually helping to keep my
Well, there's
calcium levels where they should be.
yeah, they're certainly not harming anything. That's for sure.
Oh gosh, no. Recycling.
So
Oh yeah.
here we've got a
My
better, little larger view of your tank. Your Duncan's looking happy. I mean,
oh
that's a great
yes.
looking hammer. The mushrooms, do you ever have to pare those back or trim
Um,
them? Do they stay
not
pretty much?
yet.
Okay.
This was actually after I dipped with a peroxide betadine mix. So this is actually them looking fairly cruddy.
I like
But no,
David's
I mean
idea.
everything's
Rent a Harlequin shrimp.
that actually is what a lot of people recommend, that if you get a harlequin shrimp to remove those tiny little cute starfish, trade it with a friend. Go, hey, you know what? We'll keep bouncing it around to different tanks. The only issue with that, your tank isn't my tank, isn't his tank, so you are exposing your shrimp to a lot of undue stress. Also, catching them can be a little tricky because they like their caves. They're not social friends. They are very much creepers. They take their food into their cave and they eat it quietly.
So, do you have any current projects that you're looking at doing, or is the tank just kind of like, hey, it's in grow mode?
It's in grow mode, and I'm not doing anything until I can eradicate the bryopsis. And I know bryopsis is not a phosphate issue. It's not a nutrient issue. It's an evil organism issue. So
I've heard once you get it, it's a heck of a thing to get rid of. Knock on wood. I'm
yes.
sure I'm due in the future for it at some point. It hasn't arrived at my doorstep yet, thankfully. But if uh, if you're still battling it, hopefully you beat it by the time I end up with it. But
Thank you. Yep, I'm
I'll
trying magnesium now. I have my magnesium levels actually at close to 1600,
mhm.
which was a recommendation I saw, I think, on a BRS post at one point. And
Did
then
it
I also
suggest
have Reef.
fluconazole?
Yes, I actually just bought that. And everyone says that it's fine for corals, but this is the one time in my life, friends, I'm actually setting up a makeshift 10-gallon QT tank. Just in case any of my corals do not appreciate this being added, I can move them out immediately
Yeah,
before I kill
I've used
anything.
fluconazole twice before. Like I think within the first year of my tank, the bane of my existence was turf algae. And
Yes.
I went after
Yep.
it with fluconazole, and it eradicated the turf algae and most of my corals. But
It's
I, I
exactly
I
what I am hearing.
I overdosed on it, right? So
Okay. Yes, no, that
I
definitely
followed the
matters.
directions and I dosed what exactly it said. Now, yeah, and I did a lot of damage. It didn't lose everything, right? But I mean, it really took out a bunch of stuff. And
Oh, yes.
fast forward another
QT
six
tank.
months, the or the turf algae is back again. It's just my tank settling in, and I've got so much going on, and of
Yep.
course I'm changing too many things. But I thought, all right, well, being as I don't have a lot of corals now, why not, right? So I went in
Exactly.
at half strength, and this time it took the turf algae out. Took a little bit longer, but I didn't lose any corals. So
Yes,
um,
I mean, I'm expecting a 2 to 3 week kind of treatment period on this before I start seeing it truly dissipate. So,
right, right.
we'll see.
So you got your name here. Is this looks like a 3D printed thing you got? Where did that come from?
This was my Rhino's Reef thing. Yes, no,
Okay,
this is my frag rack from Rhino's Reef. He puts your name on the outside on the magnet.
very, very nice.
Super awesome. Love it.
Pretty reasonable price in your opinion for
Oh, yeah,
those? Okay.
definitely.
Yeah,
And he
excellent.
happens to, like, as stupid as it sounds, he lives, like, phenomenally close to me. Our kids go to the same
Oh,
school.
excellent, excellent.
And we didn't even know until I, like, gave him my address, and he was like, "You shitting me?"
Right, yeah. Yeah, it sounds like fluconazole may be the better go-to than what's that one that everybody was talking about a few months ago? I believe it was another algaecide. Can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I'm not up on all that.
It was all the rage here not too long ago, but so do you believe in superpowers, reefing superpowers? Do you
If yes, some people are very good at certain like, there are some people who truly have a gift with,
vibrant, yes.
like, acroporas and stuff where they just know exact flow, exact like, they can grow them out spectacular. Do I have a reefing superpower?
Yeah,
Neglect. That's mine,
neglect.
neglect.
And
Yes.
and
Oh,
some
there.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And
Vibrant.
and
Vibrant.
somehow you're making it work for you, right?
Yes, exactly. But
Well,
honestly, it has done wonders in terms of my neglect has given my tank the gift of an ecosystem. It is pretty much bulletproof at this point because a lot of people go, "Oh, I use Tim's. I threw it in. My tank is cycled." Yeah. No, your tank is cycled for no fish. You have the appropriate amount of bacteria to dissolve what's in the tank. So then people throw in a bunch of stuff and shit hits the fan because
yeah.
no, you're cycled for level here, you're now level here. We gotta get that bacteria to catch up.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it is, the more like kind of a laissez-faire type of approach is the more your hands are in your tank, and not literally speaking, but we're adding this coral in, which brings this bacteria, and we're adding that fish in, and all of a sudden now your balance is out of whack, right? And then if
Yep.
and things are going to do what they're going to do, and that's where we usually get into those battles, I think, in my experience. And then when you stop that, and then you let things just ride and gel, those things get back in balance again and work. I mean, I kind of like other people to chime in with their experience on that. We can't say that your tank is going to be in stasis forever, right? But
I mean, honestly, there are just some moments where just leave it the fuck alone.
right,
Stop it. Just leave it alone. Just stop touching it. Let it ride for a little bit. I mean, if it's something drastic like, "Hey, my nitrates are over 100," like, obviously not, don't let that ride. But certain things, relax,
right.
chill. Neglect it.
Yeah, let it be happy for a while. Yeah, I agree. It wasn't until actually started doing that that things got better. I mean, we use fun words like neglect but it's just more like, hey, chill out for a while and then let things
Yep.
get balanced out, and then slowly maybe just change a thing or two at a time, and rather than all this chaos that we introduced. At least
Oh,
that's
yeah,
my kind of
everything
mind.
I've been moving slowly, one at a time, seeing how we're doing. I mean, I moved my acans. I know I still use that. Sorry, it's macromosa. It's an acan to me, and it'll always be an acan to me.
Poor man's
Moved
reef.
them up just a little bit to the middle. Yep, right there. They have so many new little baby growth on them. It's gonna look amazing. Yes, my see, I love all these comments. My tank loves being neglected. See?
Sam is the master
Let
of
it
tank
ride,
neglect.
friends. Let it ride. So within a month. So at the very, very top, that's my pink tip. I have 2 mouths on that now, within a month of adding it to my tank. Do you know how many people were like, biocubes, they can't have those in them? Well, no. Right there, I have it. And
Yeah,
it's living and
it
it's
does
doing
look like
great.
a very nice. It does look like it's doing healthy. Good extension.
Yeah. Oh, Mushy Man, gotta call out him. Mushy Man Corals. Love
Nice.
him. That was from him. He absolutely loved that.
Do you have any? And this is, of course, this is a sponsor-free zone. So
Yeah.
Average Joe's Reef won't receive sponsorship and doesn't seek it. So, but everybody has personal preferences, and that's all good, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Do you have any coral vendors? Because we obviously have to get them from someplace, right?
Yes.
Do you have coral vendors
I do not.
that you've had good
I
luck with
am
or preference?
everybody's horrible bane. You know who my favorite place to go buy coral is? Petco. Why? Because fun fact, a lot of people don't realize it. Petco sources their corals from local vendors. They're the same vendors that your local fish store has access to. Like ORA, they get ORA, everyone gets ORA kind of thing. Like
Right.
and a lot of these corals are just, oh my god, like most of those zoas. I mean, I did buy. I think I purchased like 3 of them from non-Petco sources. But there are some of them where it's like, here's a $10 frag that ends up being something that on a website would be like 45, $50 for 2 of them.
Yeah, it might not look happy in the store, but if you can get it home, maybe for that kind of money, let's see what
Exactly.
happens,
Find
right?
a Petco in your area that is decent. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love to sponsor and be one of those small local fish store people who goes, the closest local fish store to me is like 2 hours away.
Yeah, I
So it's
suffer.
either I order or I just hit up the local Petco.
Right, I suffer the same amount. Yeah, so I mean, if hey, whatever your source is that's working for your tank, that's great.
Exactly, but that dip every time I get from Petco, I dip. That's the
Yeah,
one thing. Nope, dip, dip, dip. Clean,
that is prudent.
scrub it. Oh, they had a frag that was nothing but bubble algae on it, and I laughed and I put a picture because it had a little sign next to it saying $25. That is an expensive bubble.
Right.
Holy moly.
Yeah, so I mean, your tank is looking pretty healthy. It looks like you're having a good time with it.
Yeah, so I mean that's my Montepora right in the middle right there, which I think is doing splendidly. It came in
Yeah,
as this teeny tiny little frag,
looking at it
and he's
earlier from oops, sorry, folks. There, trying to pause that. Yeah, from earlier pictures, I could see the growth progression. If you look back on there, it looked definitely smaller and it's growing out. That's great. Monoporas are fun. I like them.
yes, oh yeah. And don't freak out people if they turn brown. It is just them catching up to your lighting because they all have a symbiotic little organism living inside of them that needs to adapt to your lighting. This guy browned out. I had so many brown spots on him, but I was like, ride it out, leave it the fuck alone. And guess what? It greened right back up again once the xanthan inside of it realized, hey, I still have lights.
Yeah, I've had some similar issues too, where maybe I put it up to too much light or whatnot, and
Mhm.
fortunately, sometimes you get lucky and it will turn around for you. But I've had occasions where I it was too much light too fast and I just lost it, So,
Yes.
but like
Yeah,
you say,
usually if you go to
wa-
too little light, you have less of an issue. When you have too
yeah,
much light, I mean, you like fry them. I don't
yeah.
have to worry about that in a biocube.
No, no, that's probably not a problem that you have there, but it's good. I'm glad to see that, and like I say, having proper nutrients and all that, everything really helps
Yep.
for sure.
Stability.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about starfish.
Ah, yes. Sea stars, not a fish. I love them. Honestly, now that I actually have learned about them, they're so cool. They have no brains. Honestly, how they're even alive, I don't even really understand. It's like jellyfish. How is that a thing?
Right.
But they're broken down, as you see. Yep, I have my little the Echinodermatas. That's the whole classification of them. The feather sea stars, those little adorable floaty guys. Please do not buy them for your tank. They do not do well. They are a free range friend. They need big water. Then we got the chocolate chips. Then we have the brittle stars.
Now I've heard
And then
chocolate chips. Is that the kind that you were feeding your Harlequin shrimp?
yes, and that's why we got those cool little kind of dome-shaped bones, is specifically because of their cool little dome shape on them. Most starfish do not have bones that have those cool little, they just have the little squares. But every starfish has bones.
It looks like quite a bit of them too, by that matter.
Oh yes, I mean there are thousands. Each one of these is broken down into thousands of friends. So, yeah. I had to include Patrick Star, the most famous star of them all. Yeah, I mean, one of the big things about the different groups is the chocolate chips use primarily their little feet for locomotion. So that grouping of them moves with their feet versus something like a serpent star, which is more they use their feet to grab and they move their feet to pull because they lack the ability to vomit up their innards.
Okay, all
Chocolate
right.
chip starfish can vomit and dissolve things on the outside and then consume them in. The other classifications do not. So that's actually one of the grossest things about them. They are great vomit friends.
So I guess do your homework, find out, make sure that these starfish that you get, because there sounds like
Yes.
quite a variety, make sure that you don't have anything in your tank that that they may go after. I assume, like you mentioned,
I
one
mean,
was.
luckily they are so peaceful because they do have those big, which look like claws on them.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Like when I mean they're like little paper fans, they're just there to do their little fan dance when they're hungry. I mean, they sit there and they go like this, like, hey, I'd like a starfish. And then they have these little things that do nothing on them. They're really harmless, absolutely harmless.
Do you find that they ever bulldoze things over in your tank that you wish they
You know,
hadn't?
the most graceful shrimp. And I have a cleaner shrimp, which was a huge mistake. Honestly, I hate him because anything I feed, he goes over and he rips it out of its mouth and he starts eating it himself. And I'm like, that is rude. The Harlequin shrimp does not do
So how did you lose? How did you lose Rose?
that. Did you know emerald crabs are awful? Because I learned the hard way. Emerald crabs are awful. I got one because I'm like, you know what? Let me just try. See if this isn't bryopsis. See if it'll help me kind of eat away at it. No. The very first thing he did is take Rose by her little claws, and I just watched him rip her to pieces.
Oh my
Every inch
God,
of
yeah.
her, he just tore her apart.
I think I've got
And
4
I was
emerald
not,
crabs in my tank, and I know I'm flirting with death, but it
I
was
was
like one of those
thrilled.
early on additions that you don't know what you don't know. Sometimes they can
Yep.
be pretty harmless, and other times maybe they can be a pest in and of themselves. But that's
I just think that because I have a small tank, because it didn't truly have a territory established, yeah, that was
Anthony.
I will never own another emerald crab again. I
Anthony
put it in
says
a bowl and I disposed of it appropriately.
Yeah, I discovered, speaking of, crabs can be like a two-way street. They said, hey, emerald crabs eat bubble algae or Valonia. And I'm like, okay. So I threw a bunch in. I still have bubble. I still have bubble
Yep.
algae.
They eat
Uh,
what they wanna eat, quite honestly. They might eat that, but statistically, they're gonna eat what they wanna eat.
yeah, I think 2 weeks ago I discovered that I have a gorilla crab.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, I'm not excited about that at all, right? So
No.
I it was it's kind of an interesting story. So when I started my tank a little over 2 years ago, I did half live rock from KP Aquatics and I did it half Marco, right? So I
Mhm.
like live rock, but I didn't want to spend all my money on live rock. So I did it
Oh,
50-50,
yeah.
right? And of course, the fun thing with that is you get some hitchhikers, right? Fast
Mhm.
forward 2 years, I've never ever seen this crab before, and I'm 99% sure he didn't come from anywhere else. But he just must have been coming in small and is hidden in that rock work, and now he's grown to this massive size, and his claw has got to be like
Yep.
it's. And the about 2 weeks ago, my girlfriend she does these night tank tours with a flashlight, right? And she says, that red crab? And I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. And we did some research because it'll only ever show a claw. It never shows itself. It's always under the rock work. But
Oh,
from the
wow.
black pointed pinchers on the end, we say, okay, probably a gorilla crab. He's like,
Mhm.
it's eating a fish. I'm like, oh God. Now
Oh
I'm
my
like, we're
gosh.
finally here, right? He's finally like,
Yep.
hey, I'm limping here. So he had gotten a hold of my Hell Freaky fire or hell freaky firefish. And
Oh no.
but where I'm at with it, did he catch them or did the fish die? Because it was probably about 3
Yeah.
years old, and they don't live, but I think, 2 to 3 years old. And it had been acting kind of lethargic. Everybody else is healthy. You've got no problems going on. And he's, I know he's about 3 years old. And I'm like, well, he's probably not.
Mhm.
So I don't know if he died and he's just doing his cleanup crew thing, or maybe he was, getting old in the weekend and kind of like wasn't so
Opportunistic.
spry anymore, right? So he's like, who knows? So I've got my mission in the next month is to try to figure out how to trap a gorilla crab that doesn't want to be caught.
Honestly, I will look into that with you because I'm super curious as to how to I mean, the only thing I can think of is like a piece of shrimp on the end of a rope, and then you wait and pull and see if he'll come with it.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna have to research every bottle trapper. I've seen some guys trap them in glasses, and they make it look so easy, right? But they don't show you on the video the 30 times they tried before that. It's
Oh,
like drop
exactly.
the glass and hey, look, I got a crab. You're like, oh. I did that.
No, I've done
We
that
did
a
that the
few
first 2
times.
nights, and we're like, no crab.
I will say I have tried where you just take one of those old ball jars that are used for like canning, and you stick a plastic bag in it and you cut the end off the plastic bag, and it creates almost like a one-way lobster trap, and it works fantastic.
Right. That's awesome. So, in summation, so far in your extended reefing journey, some of the highlights of your successes versus failures overall. I mean, you still see yourself going strong in the
Oh,
future?
yeah. I mean, honestly, you're gonna fail, people. You're gonna have moments where you're like, "Well, that was stupid. Why did I do that?" And then you learn from it. And then you go, "Well, I'm not gonna do that again." So, and that's kind of what I feel like this journey is about, is making really bad mistakes and kind of learning from them. Because you can't expect everyone to know everything.
Right,
Honestly, being a humble reefer kind of shows that you know a lot more than most people. Because those people who come in and go, "No, this is how you treat this is how you treat that." I almost don't trust those people as much
yeah,
because there's too much knowledge there. It's kind of sketchy.
right. Rather than regurgitating everything you hear, but I've definitely
Yes.
taken more of the approach of I'm going to post my stupid shit just as well, right? Because
Yeah. Oh, I love posting all of my failures. So then somebody can look at it and go, "Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna not try that, even though I was thinking about it. Now I know don't
yeah,
because she did it and that was
right. Because it's not a
bad."
contest, right? I mean, so it's
Oh,
just
exactly. It should be fun. When this becomes more of a like more of an issue for you where you're stressed out all the time and you're just not happy, you've lost the joy of reefing. And
right.
you need to take a step back and you need to realize maybe it's just that you need to refine the joy of it. Take a step back, let it ride.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, anything else that you'd like Kate, to share before we hit the road? We think we've hit about an hour here. It's been fun. Definitely liked hearing your journey there. You're doing some fun things. I like your low tech approach. Your hands off. You've got a healthy tank. You got some great fish. Your corals look
Doing
like they're
great.
growing. Yeah, and it's obviously an enjoyment for you without being a distraction in your otherwise
Oh,
busy life.
exactly.
So.
Keep it fun. If it's still fun, you're doing something right.
Yeah. So for everybody, if you've enjoyed Lindsay, reach out to her on Instagram. I was Harlequin Reef. I don't know if you have a YouTube channel, but I think primarily you're active there. If you have enjoyed the show, like and subscribe to RobB'zReef on YouTube for future episodes. Thank you very much once again, Lindsay, for joining us here. It's been an enjoyable morning. And everybody else, we've got a super fun guest coming up here in August, and we'll be announcing that next week. And Lindsay, if you should not be doing anything in August, you're more than welcome to return and just hang out.
I would love to.
Come and hang out,
As long
and
as everyone else would like me back, I
yeah,
would love to
we-
keep shooting the shit with
we'll have you
everyone.
alongside the next reefer, and you can offer us all your unsolicited opinions and help us have some fun.
Yes, and yes, I love that people are using my little slogan now, "Leave it the fuck alone."
All right, we'll go with that. Let's leave it the fuck alone, August. All
Exactly.
right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.